this segment, we're just going to be reflecting on Nigeria's 64 years of independence. And joining us to have this conversation this morning is Akin Malaolu. He's the leader of Yoruba Ronu Leadership Forum. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
right, we'll just kick off very quickly. I'm sure before we came on air, we're talking about the President's national address, and he pointed out some things in that speech. But in your perspective, I would like to ask, do you think the President's speech this morning has doused the tension and given some sort of relief to Nigerians, or is it the normal thing we were expecting would happen?
Well, when we do an overview of the President's stay in power for this long 16 months or so, whatever is reading out to the Nigerian people must also be what we could all see, what we could all imagine, and we could point at faults, or if possible, there will be solutions. But all the President said was to give assurances, to acknowledge our poverty, and by way of what I could see, what he was driving at, is that you may have to embrace poverty for a long time. Because when you say you have acknowledged and you want to put in a sustainable reform, and at the same time, you want to go ahead with your reforms that has brought us into this hardship, that means the President has not actually, he doesn't know what is amiss in governance. Because you see, by and large, Nigerian youths are beginning to come up. I listened to the conversations which just played out on your interviewing Nigerians across the nation. You could see the reflection of anger, unhappiness. And these are normal things which society expects government not to allow. Government was created by the society itself. Government was not created by Tinubu or by Buhari or by Obasanjo. The people willingly decided that this is the form of government we will want. And that government must be able to provide happiness, job opportunities, security. There should be no threats of any kind. There should be no allowance for heinous crimes like corruption, like kidnapping, like terrorism. But what do we have in the country today? A president is promising a youth confab, and at the same time, there is a bit of divisiveness amongst those who swore on oath to defend the Constitution, are guilty of being very, very divisive.
Right. You know, one of the things the President said in his address is that his administration is successfully fighting insecurity, that they have neutralized about 300 Boko Haram terrorists, and they have made remarkable strides in fighting banditry and insecurity. And they have restored peace in the north. That was in his national address. But based on what we see happen every day, how can we even place this side by side? But we say there's a world that those at the helm of affairs are living in, and it's far from the real world that we are seeing here. Or how can we make sense of this?
From the statement, from the address the President read out, he said something about, yes, we have achieved peace. And he equally said something again that once we are able to curb insecurity, farmers will be able to go to their farms. That is a conflicting statement. The President probably read something that was different, and probably he added that one, but he acknowledged that farmers could not go to the farm largely due to insecurity. So how do you now place the two issues? The President's handlers, or those who wrote the speech, must be careful to know that people will give meanings to words in most of the things they wrote down for the President. I have just pointed out one. The President is giving assurances that things are normalizing, and at the same time, he's telling us that until insecurity is fought standstill, the farmers cannot go back to the farm. That means once that is achieved, the farmers will get to the farm. How do 240 million people, how will they eat? You see, we don't have to be monotonous to understand the cast of mind of the president. He came with a policy that on the day he made that pronouncement, we equally the third day, as a leadership forum, we made our own pronouncement on his policy direction, which we saw to be extreme capitalism, where the leader has no role to play in the welfare of the people. And we have seen it repeatedly done by him, where you promise 40 truckload of rice for each local government, nothing comes out. You said you are going to grant waiver for rice to come in. Up to now, no waiver has been given. So it's extreme capitalism where the market forces takes charge. And it did something that was no world power, no world leader has ever done. You floated your naira, your currency by 100%. That is the devastation that he has caused for himself. He triggered the inflation with those two policies. And he who triggers inflation cannot fight it down. So Nigerians should start to think about what next to do, how to survive this plague. I won't call it Egyptian plague or biblical plague, but this is a plague. We are just getting into it. Because when he floated the naira, we said it clearly through a public statement that naira will get to 1,000 by September, and it got to 1,000 by September. And we said it equally to that. Naira will get to 1,002 by December. That December, when we sat down with our economic team in the forum, because they are leaders, we are also leaders. We are not beneficiaries. We are end users, but we are leaders. And we now said, with the way things are going, by January 31st, 2024, naira will be 1,005 to the dollar. Exactly on that 31st of January, it got to 1,520 naira to the dollar. You see, we could see it coming. His policy is extreme capitalism, where he has nothing for the people. He has taken virtually, not only subsidy has gone from petrol, subsidy has gone from education. It has even gone from foods. It has gone from every facet of our life. And I think we are all in a cul-de-sac.
In a cul-de-sac, is that what you said?
Yeah, we are all in the problem. The problem is going to magnify itself little by little. By December, January, it may become unbearable for even government to move on. It's so unfortunate.
All right, so we're reflecting on Nigeria's 64th independence and how far we've come through. Now, it has also been said that the 1993 election was the free and the fairest. Also, recently, former President Olusegun Obasanjo said that the type of democracy we are practicing is not right for us, that we should coin out, and he recommended something like Afro-democracy because of the diverse kind of people that Nigeria has. So my question now is, has Nigeria's political influence, as Nigeria's political culture, has it evolved? Looking back from 1960 or looking back from 1993 general elections to former President Olusegun Obasanjo to the late Musa Yar'Adua, to Jonathan, down to Buhari, and now to President Bola Tinubu. Do you think that politically we have evolved?
The definition of leadership has been lost to most Nigerians. A leader must have desire and energy to lay down, to turn around, to consider, to lead, to exceed, and to restrain. Such leaders, we had them in the 60s. Awolowo laid down. Awolowo turned around. Azikiwe did the same thing. Ahmadu Bello did the same thing. They played their politics in such a manner that you could see growth. you could see dialogue, conversation in some, like in the parliament. I had a discussion with Solomon Dalong, the former minister for sports. We were discussing and he said he had an experience with Solomon La. He was with Solomon La from 18-year-old as a youth for 40 years. And he told me what happened at the parliament, where Ahmadu Bello said there is no opposition in the north. So both the opposition chair and his own chair, he will put his leg on the opposition chair to show that there is no opposition in the north. Awolowo and others, they had their own opposition people around them. Then Awolowo one day, he asked for the middle belt leaders to give him somebody. They brought him Tafa. He said, go and form opposition. Name it, because at that time they don't register political parties. And he formed it. Very early in the morning, they got to the parliament. Taka occupied the opposition seat. And when Ahmadu Bello walked in, he saw that somebody has occupied the opposition seat. And the next thing Awolowo did was to stand up and announce the opposition from the north. You see, the conversation they had at that time was so beautiful. It allowed progress to continue. If you reflect back, we have seen industries in this country. Nigerian Airways, National Shipping Line, up to Nigerian Railways, were all destroyed from 1983. Everything vanished. And what are we having today in Nigeria? We are now having something we call diseconomies of agglomeration, which means industries are leaving Nigeria for West African regions. Not that they are leaving from Lagos to Kano because labor is cheap, but they are leaving because of general insecurity, because they cannot plan. So if you look at our struggle from 1993 to date, it has been cascading kind of leadership and results. But we had a semblance of good leadership when Obasanjo was in charge. For a man to remove your debts significantly, that is an achievement. Right. And he created EFCC to fight corruption. That means the man has the desire to create stronger institutions. Right. Now, what do we have in Nigeria today? From Jonathan's period, tribalism crept in, religion crept in. And where those two things comes into governance, you can never get it right again.
You see, this conversation about reflecting on Nigeria's 64 years, if we sit down and talk about it for 1 week, we will not be able to finish it. But because of our time, I'd like to, you've highlighted that some of the progresses, even during former President Olusegun Obasanjo's regime. But on the newspaper this morning, the Punch newspaper highlighted some milestones of this renewed hope agenda, which includes the 70,000 minimum wage approval, security. Over 3,700 terrorists have been killed in the last 6 months, presidential initiative on CNG, Nigerian Education Loan Fund, talking about the student loan initiative, Nigerian Consumer Credit Corporation, which is about 3.5 billion naira in loan disbursement, foreign exchange reserves, economic stabilization bill, headline inflation, oil and gas, which is 3 new landmark presidential directives issued to unblock billions of dollars in the investment. They listed some of the achievements. Would we, because, you talked about how this administration has, in the space of 16 months, they've just been rolling out some policies that we can't actually see and say, okay, this is what it is. But based on these milestones that have been highlighted, would we say to an extent that this administration is actually working? I want us to be able to balance it up, but
The definition of economic growth is not propaganda. It's not false formula. It's not to put lies on the pages of newspapers. Economic growth has meaning. And the meaning has to do with the measurements. When the government is talking about economic stability or stabilization bill, it is just some miserable scrap sheets of papers to us. We should be intelligent enough to let the government know that without discipline, without stable macroeconomic variables, frameworks, you can never get it right. You cannot have a large government and you say you want to stabilize an economy that $15 billion went for coastal roads. You borrowed $3.3 billion from Afrexim Bank. You are paying back $12.5 billion through a crude oil swap. When you add the two together, that's $27 billion out of this economy that has gone down. So what is all this CNG? Where are the gas stations across the country? You're talking of Boko Haram, 3,000. They killed so many people, farmers in Yobe, some weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we know what is happening in Niger State, in Kaduna. And the first one you mentioned,
minimum wage, 70,000.
minimum wage. Our forum said it should be 250,000. And Labour came to 250,000. It was that 250,000 that the president now told them, if we give you 250,000, then get ready for petrol pump price increase.
But even with the 70,000 naira, we still...
They have taken the money through the back door from you.
Right. You know, Akin Malaolu, I really have a lot for us to talk about, and I hope that in the course of this celebration, 64 years, we'll definitely be able to have you join us again, because looking at the time, we have run out of time so much. But I'm saying this so that our viewers will know, because there's so much to get from you, that we would love to have you join us again on the show to continue this conversation as we're celebrating Nigeria throughout this week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's been insightful, I must say.